Columbus, Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine said Tuesday the state will cut nearly $800 million in spending, most affecting education and health care, to offset the loss of tax revenue stemming from the coronavirus crisis.
The cuts include a $300 million reduction in K-12 public school funding, $210 million from Medicaid spending and $110 million from college and university funding, DeWine said.
DeWine said all state government agencies will see their budgets cut, adding up to $100 million, except for the State Department of Corrections, which operates state prisons.
As recently as the end of February, the state was running ahead of its estimated revenues by $200 million. But as of the end of April, state revenues now are below estimates by $776.9 million, according to DeWine.
Much of the state's revenue comes from two sources: income taxes, which are tied to employment, and sales taxes, which are tied to commercial activity. Both have dropped since DeWine closed wide swaths of Ohio's economy to stem the spread of the coronavirus.
As you can see, that is a turnaround going the wrong way of close to a $1 billion, DeWine said.
The state will not immediately tap its rainy day fund, which contains $2.7 billion, DeWine said. He said he anticipates that money will be needed in the future.
Under the state constitution, Ohio must balance its budget by the end of each fiscal year, which ends on June 30. But that means Ohio likely will enter next budget year needing to fill another budget hole.
I know I have said it's raining, but we really don't want to tap into it just yet, DeWine said. This rain is not a passing spring shower. It could be, we don't really know, but it could be a cold, long lingering storm. We should not use that rainy day fund until we have to.
DeWine said the details of the spending cuts will be coming Wednesday.
The state's total annual budget is $32.4 billion. The vast majority goes to four categories: Medicaid, $15.5 billion, K-12 education, $9.8 billion, higher education, $2.5 billion, and corrections, $2 billion.
Another $2.3 billion goes to general government operations, which includes the governor's office, state courts, the legislature and other state agencies.
DeWine's announcement drew criticism from Policy Matters Ohio, a liberal think tank. The group said state lawmakers could help close the budget hole by eliminating tax breaks for businesses incorporated as LLCs and other groups.
First and foremost, he should use the rainy day fund. It's pouring outside. That will help close the budget gap now, Zach Schiller, Policy Matters Ohio's research director, said in a statement.
Education groups issued statements Tuesday expressing concerns about the cuts, although they said they're awaiting further details.
As the state will soon begin planning next year's budget, we also call upon the legislature to work collaboratively to make children and families a priority by finding ways to increase revenue in order to avoid making more drastic cuts that will be devastating to children, families and communities, said Neil Bayerman, a spokesman for the Ohio Federation of Teachers, a teachers' union.
DeWine suggested the education funding cuts will be weighted to relatively spare poor schools. He also said schools will be allocated money from the CARES Act, the federal coronavirus relief bill, that could offset some of the lost funding.
I have expressed here at these press conferences concern about students at schools that do not have the revenue, poor schools, poor children, he said. And so that certainly is taken into consideration when we put that formula together.
He said the Medicaid cuts, without providing details how, would not affect essential services. The program, which provides health care to the poor and disabled, is expected to see increased enrollment due to the bad economic environment.
DeWine said the state is not cutting prisons, which already are overcrowded, because they've gotten to be more expensive to operate as state officials try to deal with COVID-19 outbreaks among prisoners and staff.
The state has not yet released its April revenue figures. But in March, state tax receipts came in $159.4 million, or 10%, below state officials' estimates. April is the first full month with the closures in effect.
Even as the state begins to reopen its economy in phases, experts expect a slow turnaround.
We don't have a crystal ball, DeWine said. We can't predict where the economy's going. We want to be optimistic, and I am optimistic, but we also want to be cautious.